The most addictive thing about game development is that you have an idea in your head. Once you've talked to somebody about what it's going to be, that you've talked about, you've discussed it, it's like, I can see that in my mind's eye, I know what it is. But then, you get skilled people involved, and they take it and they march it that much further down the field. And by the time it's done, you look at it and you're like, holy smokes, that's like 15 times better than what I had in my head. So naturally you say to them, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's awesome.
Part of working as a team is a lot of, I discovered this part of the game, here's how it works. Or when we're trying to figure out new systems or new designs, it's very easy to just go off on your own and implement something that isn't what anybody actually wants. And so just kind of that feedback and figuring out what direction to take.
The company is like a boat. The boat's job isn't to accomplish great things. The boat's job is to hold the people out of the water. And then the people row or run the sails. Without the people, a boat is nothing. With the people, you've actually got that possibility to go somewhere. And if everybody gets in rhythm and everybody's paying attention to what everybody else is doing, you can get somewhere really fast. We've done Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment, and we did our own expansion to Baldur's Gate called Seize Your Dragon Spear. So 5 separate products now in the Baldur's Gate family. So it's been a fair commitment on our part, but at the same time, the payoff has been pretty awesome.
Trent Oster and Cameron Topher are both veterans of the video game industry and former BioWare co-workers.
Have a bad feeling.
Topher left BioWare in 2000 to work in the US as a lead programmer and started his own company in 2004. Oster, one of the original BioWare team, started Beamdog in 2009 with Topher as a partner. The goal of the company was to reformat popular games such as Planescape Torment and Baldur's Gate 2 in order to introduce them to new audiences on mobile platforms. Recently, they started working on their own original projects. And some say Beamdog has the makings of a BioWare 2.0. Let's find out why.
I got into video games over Christmas, probably close to 24, 25 years ago. My older brother came home for Christmas holidays. I was home from university, from computer science, and we got interested in the idea of trying to make a video game. Now, he had been playing with fractal algorithms to generate interesting imagery, and we were using it to generate kind of these mountainscapes. And we started building essentially a simulator where you had little robots that moved around an environment and a terrain environment. And we thought, hey, this is a pretty neat thing. We should totally come back to this at some point. So we were both thinking about it, and we decided, you know what? Let's go for it.
I started programming when I was about 10 years old, and just with basic kind of stuff, making games, because that was what I was most interested in, but just very, very simple kind of MS Paint art games. But having that self-taught background and that kind of interest in games meant that by the time I was in high school, I taught myself Java, and that got my foot in the door with professional programming experience. And the games were something that I kept doing on the side. I went to the University of Calgary into the computer science program, and I was able to do course projects that were games and keep on doing stuff like game jams to keep that kind of hobby aspect. And it all came together so that when I was getting ready to graduate, I actually got a scholarship through I Need Diverse Games to go to GDC, and it was there that I was able to meet with Beamdog and got the chance to get an interview here and got the job.
How I got into the industry is initially I wanted to go into film because of Star Wars, amongst other things. And then I went into basically a post-secondary school, went into writer-producer. I wanted to write for television and film. Along that way, Reboot came out from Mainframe in Vancouver. Toy Story came out that summer that I was in school, and I went, I want to do 3D. Back then, you know, people that do what I do now were a really short supply.
When I was younger, I got the Lord of the Rings box set with like behind the scenes type stuff, and I watched John Howe and Alan Lee drawing, and I thought that would be really cool to do because I always loved to draw, and I didn't really know you could apply it to video games and movies, so I really wanted to do that. So I started specializing in character design, environment work, which we would use to create our portfolio, which I used to apply here.
Summer came, I came home from university. My brother came home from university as well, and we decided, let's set up a company. Let's do computer consulting by day, video game developers by night. But instead of tackling the big game idea, let's go for a small game idea. And if by the end of the summer we can make a video game, we'll go for it. We'll become professional game developers. And we're like, all right, let's do it. So by day, we would sell and service computers, install software, set up networks, and by night, we worked on a game. It was called Blasteroids 3D, and the concept was it was the old Atari Asteroids, but in 3D. You would fly through the environment. Right around August, we were finishing.
So I'm responsible for making sure that everything we produce is of high quality, it's well thought out, it's well designed based on our resources and constraints. So some of the things that I did in the past was I was the lead designer on Siege of Dragonspear, designing the story, the layout, the dungeons, that sort of thing, what companions we would have, et cetera, et cetera. As well, I'm responsible for overseeing the work of other designers at the company. So if someone produces a gameplay design, you know, hey, there's gonna be a dungeon here with these guys here, I'm responsible for overseeing that and saying, hey, you know what would work better is if we moved this encounter over here and shifted this there, that sort of thing.
A concept artist defines the look and feel of a game in terms of characters, environments, props, that sort of thing. So we go through a lot of process in determining what these things will look like. So a lot of the work just kind of ends up being discarded, but it takes that to be able to create something that's really good. So it's a lot of trial and error, a lot of research, and it's a lot of fun exploring like a whole range of ideas.
I am a QA member. So QA stands for quality assurance, and it's generally speaking trying to make the product as good as possible for the front-facing customer.
When I got to Beamdog about 14 months ago, they were just finishing the development cycle of Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear, the expansion to Baldur's Gate. And that it seemed to have taken its toll on the team. When I came for my interview, I remember thinking that they're done with this project, they're ready to move on to something else. So I started to do some more fun events, get everybody involved with coffee walks and go to lunches together and stuff like that. So I started a Beamdog fun calendar that kind of took off. We post events, everybody's kind of welcome to put whatever they want on the calendar, and we'll kind of all do it, like Hawaiian shirt day or bring a stick to work day or fun hat day, and that just kind of keeps everything interesting around the office, and everybody's sort of looking forward to things like that, so kind of keeps things light.
The culture at Beamdog is a lot of fun. It's actually been pretty exciting because quite a few of us did join more recently and are kind of younger and have moved here for work. So we do bad movie nights every other week. We have a complicated spreadsheet voting system because the programmers got involved and had to make it overly complicated.
We play D&D every Friday, so we're working on a campaign that Zach's setting up.
That's definitely a big perk for I think a few of us, because not only is it something that pretty much everyone in the office had an existing enjoyment for, but it's also kind of work.
Every week there's always something. We have Get Ripped with Trent Day every once in a while, where our CEO goes and teaches us to lift weights in the gym.
Work-life balance in the industry is kind of a hot topic issue. There's a lot of companies where it's not unusual to do excessive overtime trying to get something done. I've been there. I've put in crazy hours. In one period, after 3 years of hardcore crunch, like 6 days a week for the first year, 2 years of 7 days a week, 12-hour, 14-hour days, and then finally crescending in that 212-hour, 2-week period, game went out the door. I went 3 days of sleep, then I took 3 months off. because I hadn't taken holidays for 5 years. I was a zombie. I was a destroyed shell of a human.
It is very important, and that is one thing that Trent is very adamant about, is he doesn't want crunches, he doesn't want people burning out, working those 50, 60, 70-hour weeks that we all know and heard of that have happened in this game industry. And that really keeps my job easier, keeping our, fun, energetic environment, because no one's burned out. Even at the end of a development cycle, we just finished releasing a game, and you can see in the room over there, everybody's talking, laughing, having a good time, and as we're getting things done. So it is really important to keep that sort of not burning out your people, right?
It took me years to get back to being a normal, balanced, creative person. When you're putting all your time in one office, in one scenario, on one thing, you're becoming this hyper-focused task unit. They don't make new and exciting things. You're not becoming a more interesting person, you're becoming a less interesting person. I have yet to have a good idea come to me from what I'm doing at work. All my good ideas, all the good concepts come from things I'm doing outside of work, things I run across. I read a book, I watch a movie, I build something, and suddenly that's in my mind, and I'll run across something at work and I'll look at it from a different angle because of some other activity I've done.
So at Beamdog, we really push for people to have interests outside of work, right? And I myself have tried to do that. I sew, I've got a 3D printer, I've got a kick-ass garden, I like to cook, and as I've kind of evolved and having more time in terms of my skill set, I've realized that all those other things that I do that are outside of video games really contribute to being able to make better games, because it makes me a more rounded person, and then I can kind of inject that into games. Here at Beamdog, we've got people with diverse interests, and that is starting to kind of feed into us having, unique games that feel alive because everyone's contributing to it.
I held the Sword Coast by its throat, and then you.
Serevok lies dead by your hand. He had power I required.
Time this child of Baal and I had words.
So we want to make games. What's the best, fastest way we can make awesome games? And the iPad had come out. I looked at it and I'm like, it's just a big iPhone. That thing's stupid. Why would anybody want a big iPhone? Small iPhones are awesome. So I was like, I got to understand it. So I go and buy one. I buy one and I'm playing with it. And I'm like, oh, I get it. This is like the most amazing computing device ever. This will change everything. And then my second thought was, what'd be awesome on this? Baldur's Gate would be awesome on this. So I started into negotiations. It took me a year to get the rights, but we signed up with Atari to do a Baldur's Gate. At the time it was going to be HD, but we found out that all the art assets were actually lost. So we couldn't recreate from the original source art. We could only pull from the art that existed in the game. So HD got crossed out and we're like, okay, what can we need to come up with a concept here that makes it appealing. Well, we'll fix the bugs, we'll polish it up, we'll make it work on new platforms, we'll make it work on newer resolutions, because the original Baldur's Gate launched 640 by 480 resolution. You had displays out that were 1920 by 1080 now, or 1920 by 1200 if you spent the money for the Pro monitor. So we're like, okay, I think we can do something here. So we came up with this idea of the enhanced editions.
Stylistically, because we've been enhancing older games. There's that want and desire to just make better, but that's not what we're doing. We have to be in service of someone's memory, and that's a unique thing. Is when you're looking at improving an older game, you're not trying to improve the actual thing. It's what someone remembers that game looking like 10 or 15 years ago.
I just do a lot of Googling, I watch a lot of documentaries. I really like exploring culture and how that works, and mythology, which I think is really important in world building. So I do a lot of research and create mood boards and get a lot of reference photos, so I have a lot to work with when I'm starting the process. And from then on, we just start with thumbnails or simple sketches to kind of get a basic idea, and then you do a lot of those and you kind of choose ones you like and build on from there. Get a lot of critique from people, points you in the right direction. I use Photoshop, which I think is pretty well known, but it's a painting program, but it also, you can do photo manipulation and whatnot. So it acts a lot like traditional media, but it's just on the computer. What the Cintiq allows me to do is pretty much like draw on the canvas. The Cintiq is the canvas, so it's pretty much like drawing traditionally, but on the computer.
We worked on the Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. We were a little nervous about it. We were investing fairly heavily, and we're hoping a market's here. So we had actually bought the domain baldursgate.com, and we didn't announce that we'd bought it. We didn't do anything with it. And then we said, okay, we're gonna experiment here. We're gonna announce. But we're gonna do it weird. We're gonna do a countdown timer. We'll set it for 3 weeks and we'll say nothing. First week passed, we were checking that site every day to see what the traffic was, and traffic was like 20 or 30 people went by. There was a bit of bubbling about it, but nothing major happening. And then a user interface designer at Apple, Sebastian DeWitt, noticed it and mentioned it on Twitter. Suddenly the traffic just started to ramp and ramp and ramp. And we're like, oh boy, this is like a week and a half remaining. Suddenly all the news sites are like, there's something up on baldursgate.com, it's a countdown and we don't know what it is. So everybody started to get excited about it. As we got closer and closer and closer, the number of people interested kept growing. Day of, it was about 40 seconds remaining in the countdown timer and the site crashed. 300,000 concurrent users couldn't handle it. So we're on the phone. It was hosted at GoDaddy at that time. We're like, bring it back up, bring it back up. So they bring it back up and boom, it gets crushed again. And then at GoDaddy, automated software kicks in and says, this website went from 100 users to 300,000 concurrent. This is totally a denial of service attack. We had to shut this subnet down. So we shut down our site, and like half a dozen other companies that were on that same kind of branch of the switch got killed because they flagged as a denial of service. So we're on the phone, it's not a denial of service, these are live actual people. So we got the site back up, and over the next week and a half, we had 1.8 million uniques hit the site. And we were like, at that moment, we knew we had something. Like Baldur's Gate, there was a definite love of this game and this concept. A lot of people were like speculating, oh, it's Baldur's Gate 3, and when we announced Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, they were like, oh, it's not Baldur's Gate 3, but you know what? Baldur's Gate working, patched up, working properly, bugs fixed, high resolution, that's pretty cool. Baldur's Gate you can play on your iPad, even better. So it turned out quite well, and the enthusiasm of the fans, I mean, geez, we've shipped Baldur's Gate almost 5 years ago now. And the enthusiasm's just been constant, and we've been rolling forward on it.
I remember the first time that we got Baldur's Gate running on an iPad, it was just a magical experience. Everyone was crowded around their individual tablets trying to play the game, and it was just great because this is a game that we loved, and it was on an all-new platform, and it seemed to work great right out of the box. That was a thrilling moment.
Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition has sold over 1 million copies. The game's available in 19 different languages. It's available on PC, Mac, iOS, Android, Linux. It's available on Steam, GOG, Beamdog, Gamersgate, a number of other smaller sites. So it's spread pretty far and pretty wide. Being an international company from a small center like Edmonton, people look at that like, oh, well, how do you go out into the world and how do you deal with that? And I look at it more as how can you be a business today and not be global? How can you decide, oh, I'm gonna only focus on this tiny little market when there's this huge potential market out there? With Baldur's Gate, we're lucky. We've got an established brand. There were localizations done in the game previously, so we could use that work and leverage that going forward. And when we did new content, we could just translate the new content and move that forward. But the way we pushed it worldwide was we connected with enthusiasts. We found our fans. So the first summer working on Blastroids was horrible. It was just poorly done, poorly executed, but we learned enough on how to actually make a game and what the challenges were, and we learned where to put work in and where to not put work in. And we started another company together, and we called ourselves Finite Elements Software. And over the summer, a high school friend of ours had come down, Greg Zeschuk, and he said, I love what you guys are doing. I think this is awesome. I got these 3 other guys I want you to meet, and we should do something together. So then Greg brought down Ray Musica and Augustine Yip, and we formed a company together called BioWare after much discussion about the name. And the 6 of us were off and running, making video games.